So I've really tried to stop impulse buying fabric. This is a goal of mine, and I thought it was going to be a lot easier to do ever since Joanne's died. Why Joanne? Why her? Why did she have to die? We went out for the homies, am I right? But I was at Hobby Lobby a couple of months ago buying fabric for my Brittle Star costume, and my husband wanders off, and he comes back with this. Vintage camera fabric. How am I supposed to resist this? So I plunked it immediately straight down on the counter, got 5 yards of it, and stashed it away until I figured out what to do with it. But today's the day, team. I also realized upon looking at it that I'm actually pretty sure we own a representative of each of these camera types featured on this fabric. So the game plan for today's video, make a cute little dress out of this camera fabric, talk to you a little bit about different camera variations and the science of how cameras work. This is a science channel, don't worry, still doing science content. And maybe even throw in some bonus chemistry near the end, you'll see. And yeah, we're just gonna have fun. So let's do it. To do this, we first need to take a look at our camera cabinet. Let's go for a ride. The camera cabinet. This is the collection of cameras that we own. Yes, we have a problem, but we're not getting into that right now. Right now it's time to sew, or cut more accurately. First, like a good little seamstress, I ironed my fabric to get all the wrinkles out, found all my pattern pieces I needed, went ahead and laid out my fabric and pinned all of the correct pattern pieces on top of that to make sure I had enough room. And after all of that was done, it was finally time to cut out pattern pieces. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about cameras. Let's just start with the general layout of a camera. You know, you got a lens, you got something you can look through. The goal is light is traveling through the lens, hitting some sort of sensor inside the camera, be it light sensitive film in a film camera or a digital sensor in a digital camera. And you also have different settings that you can change the focus of your lens depending on what distance away you're trying to take a picture of. You can change your shutter speed, aperture, how much light the lens is letting in, etc. You can even change how sensitive your sensor or film is by swapping out your film or manually changing it on your camera. That's the gist. Viewfinder focusing, taking a picture. So let's get into some different variations of cameras. Figure we'll start with the classic SLR or single lens reflex. There's also the DSLR or digital single lens reflex. This, you can see, I have a viewfinder right here. But my viewfinder doesn't go all the way through my camera. So when I take a picture, I look through the viewfinder and can focus, spinning my lens around. But the way that I'm seeing an image is the light's coming through this lens, hitting a mirror and getting reflected up into my viewfinder. And when I actually go to take the picture, the mirror lifts up out of the way. The light can hit the film, and then the mirror shuts back down so that I can continue to focus and see my image. Because of this, when I take a picture, my viewfinder goes dark because the mirror is no longer in the way, no longer reflecting that image back to me. This also means that the picture you see through your viewfinder is actually what is coming through the lens, what your picture is going to look at. This is my Canon AE1, a prime example of an SLR, and I like these cameras. Oh my gosh. Now we cut. Okay, but seriously, we actually are gonna cut all the fabric pieces now. The TLR, or Twins Lens Reflex, this is my favorite camera of all times. It actually has 2 lenses on it. The most popular brand of these is Rolleiflex. There's a lot of other brands that came out with TLRs, but they all kind of look like a classic Rolleiflex. I love this baby. This works just the same as an SLR, except you have 2 lenses, one for taking the picture and one for focusing. So when I look through the screen and focus my camera, one of these lenses is actually got a mirror behind it that is reflecting up into my viewfinder. The other one does not, and that's the one that takes the picture. So the picture you're taking doesn't actually exactly correspond to what you're seeing in your viewfinder, but the lenses are right on top of each other and are very close. This guy, you'll also notice, is way bigger or taller than the SLR I showed you, and this is because it actually takes a bigger type of film called 120 film, which is also known as medium format. Other cameras take your classic 35mm film, and 120 film is just a whole lot bigger and corresponds to more resolution in the final picture. For example, this is what 120 negatives look like. This is what 35 negative looks like. A lot smaller. The 35mm twin lens reflex, or TLR. I don't actually have an example of this, but this camera I have here, my Bolsi B2, there is a version of it called the Bolsi C2, I believe, that looks pretty much like the camera on the Fabric. So same deal as the Rolleiflex, except you're working with a 35mm camera. Two lenses, one of them is taking the picture, one of them is the focusing one, and you're just using 35mm film instead of 120. Twins. Good morning and welcome to day 2 and the final day of this project. Just wanted to show you real quick the progress I've made. I got the top done. Stray threads everywhere. Ooh, got the nice open back. Just kidding, there's gonna be a zipper that goes in there. Top is done. I think it looks super cute. Gotta do the skirt and pockets today, so it's a pretty easy dress pattern. Shouldn't take too long. I do have to run to Michael's to pick up some sewing notions, like a zipper and some bias tape and etc. But I'm also gonna be picking up some fabric dye. That's right. This isn't staying white because I'm a disaster. I'm gonna dye it a color, and that's where our bonus chemistry gets in. We're gonna dive into a little bit of fabric dye chemistry, but let me go run that errand real quick and then we'll get back to work. Sewing notions achieved. Let's actually make the skirt now. So first I had to sew together all of the skirt panels, put in some pockets, because heck yes, pockets in a dress. Then I had to gather up all the skirt material, aligned it, I attached it to the dress, and you'll see it, but first we gotta talk about more cameras. Let's talk about rangefinders. My Bolsi B2 is an example of a rangefinder. You see how there is my viewfinder right here, and it goes all the way through the camera. So when I am focusing with this, I'm focusing and I'm seeing directly through the camera right here. So whatever picture I take with my lens is not quite exactly the same picture I'm focusing on. This Leica M6, which is my husband's, he doesn't actually know I'm borrowing it currently, is another example of a rangefinder. The viewfinder is right here, and here's where you're looking out. So you can actually even maybe kind of see my finger behind that viewfinder. And then the picture is taken through this lens. And with a rangefinder, you focus differently than with an SLR because you are not looking directly at the image. Inside of the camera in the rangefinder is a little patch that you actually align to get focus. Whee! Rangefinders aren't necessarily better than SLRs, they're just a bit of a different focusing experience and kind of up to personal preference for what people like. After what feels like a freaking million years, even though I think it was really only about an hour and a half, the skirt is on! I actually ended up lining the skirt just because white fabric tends to be see-through, or even just pale fabric tends to be see-through, and yeah. It also adds a nice little heft to the bottom of the skirt, which is nice. But hold on. Okay, anyhow. Now I'm going to put in the zipper all down the back, finish off the neck seams, and it's gonna be time to dye it. So let's go do those steps. I haven't sewed this intensely on a clothing item in so long. I've been doing so many. Oh wait, I just made that brittle star outfit. That one didn't feel as intense as this, and I was also probably because I was making it up as I went along, whereas this I actually have more of an idea of what I'm doing. I don't know, I've been doing a lot more quilts recently, which are way easier than dresses. So let's get this thing ready to be dyed. Hello and welcome to my bathroom. The dress is all done being sewn, and it's time to dye it. This actually happens to be the third bathroom I featured on this channel, so comment down below if you like this bathroom, my parents' guest bathroom, or my in-laws' guest bathroom. Those who have watched for a long time will know that I take a lot of footage in the bathroom. Anyhow, we're gonna dye this, and this is where some really exciting chemistry comes in, because dyeing is all about chemistry. So I picked up this RIT pink dye at the store today, and when you go to buy fabric dye, you'll see kind of just a normal bottle, and also bottles that say synthetic. That has to do with the type of fabric that you're dyeing, because natural fibers like cotton, wools, blanking on any other natural fiber, silks, there we go, versus synthetic fibers like polyester or acetate dye very differently because they're made up of different molecules. And dye molecules actually chemically interact with the fabric molecules and stick to them, and that's what we mean when we dye something. So in this case, I'm using cotton for my dress, so I just bought the normal RIT dye meant for natural fabrics. The ones meant for synthetic fabrics are formulated a little bit differently to specifically stick to synthetic fabric molecules. So, I think I burnt myself. We've got the bathtub, beautiful. A pot within the bathtub, even lovelier, full of salt, soap, and hot water. And I'm about to tar the dye mixture in there. The purpose of the soap and the salt is actually to make the environment more chemically friendly, to really facilitate sticking those dye molecules onto the dress, which has been pre-wet, and you can see it sitting over there. I'm also going to throw in a piece of polyester acetate lace, and we're going to compare how the cotton dress versus this dyes. Also, I realized I forgot something to stir it with because I was going to use my hand, but that water's freaking hot. So let me go grab something to stir with real quick. Different dyes are made up of different molecules, hence why they result in different colors. And like I said before, different fabrics are different molecules. And in particular, the hydroxyl groups or oxygen-hydrogen groups that are attached to the cotton fibers really like to hydrogen bond with the dye molecules. And that's why cotton is a fairly easy fabric to dye. Got that in there. Kind of blocking it. Sorry, fans. Let's toss this bad boy in. We let this sit for 30 minutes, and next time you'll see this dress, I'll be wearing it. Also, it does distinctly look like I've killed somebody in the bathtub. No blood was shed here. See you guys later. And then finally, we have bellows cameras. Like this one here that pops out, and this giant one right here. The point of the bellows is to actually move the lens forward and backwards. On a typical camera, you can twist and rotate the lens, and it kind of almost is like a cylinder and it spins in on itself to adjust for the distance of what you're taking. But with a bellows camera, the bellows actually do the adjusting in and out of the camera. This is my Voigtlander Fitessa, which is also a rangefinder camera with bellows. And this is my Intrepid 4x5, which is considered a large format camera. And it takes film that is literally 4 inches by 5 inches. Some of the negatives, even more resolution. But it uses the bellows to twist, and you can even push or pull it out, and that gives you different focus, and it even gives you different depths of field within your view. That's our camera overview. Let's finish this project out, shall we? Okay, so that is a wrap on the camera dress. I took it out to the botanical gardens, as you saw, took pictures with it. If you stay tuned to after the end of this video, there are pictures of the pictures I was taking at the botanical gardens, if that made any sense. I think the dress turned out really cute. It turned out maybe ever so slightly more pink than I wanted it to, but it might fade a little bit more with washes, and I still think it looks good on me. So super pleased with how it turned out. Super cute, light, easy, simple silhouette. and it's covered with vintage cameras. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Oh, forgot something. This was the piece of lace that I put in the dye bucket with the dress. You'll notice it literally looks unchanged. Again, just showing you how that dye that was meant for natural fibers, like our cotton my dress was made out of, does not really work with or interact with synthetic fibers like polyester, which is what this lace is made out of. I promise I did throw it in the dye bucket. I'm not bamboozling y'all. So that's just a little fun extra chemistry I threw into this video. Hope you enjoyed learning about all the different types of cameras, a little bit about dye chemistry, and enjoyed the final product. Let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe to my channel, tell all your friends about it, and keep it sciencey!